Okay. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. So we'll continue with chapter 6. We only have a few verses left. And then we'll start with chapter 7. And at the end of the class, we can just kind of finalize the closed book exam dates and how we're going to do it. Okay. So Vyasadeva at the beginning of chapter 6 asked Narada about his life. What did you do after the Bhaktivedantas left? And then Narada already mentioned a little bit in chapter 5, but now in chapter 6 he gives more details about his journey, both physical and spiritual journey, how he attained perfection. And this is how far we've got. It's a really beautiful part of the Bhagavatam, very inspiring part. So we are on text 33. Pragayata sapaviryani tirtapada priyashava ahutaiva me shigram darshanam yati chetasi. Swarup Damodar Prabhu?
The Supreme Lord Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart, as if called for, as soon as I begin to chant his holy activities.
Shall I make it bigger or is it
Yeah, I
clear?
think I've just got my camera in the way of the screen somehow. I'll just try and
Okay.
change it. I think it's from my end.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is Narada saying that as soon as I chant Krishna's names, Krishna's glories, then Krishna immediately appears. So this is a very, you could say, typical psychology. If we hear our name, if we hear that people are talking about us, then we get quite kind of alert and maybe excited. Somebody was saying, if you're walking down a corridor and there is a door open, and just as you're walking past the door, you hear that they're talking about you, then you'll definitely stop and listen. So Krishna has also got this psychology that he likes to hear his glories, but the difference is that our liking to hear our glories is selfish and it's related to our false ego. Whereas with Krishna, the way Jiva Goswami explains it, that the Lord is attracted to his glorification, but it doesn't mean that he becomes so absorbed that he forgets to show his mercy. Both happens. And that the Lord is attracted not for his own glorification, but to give mercy to the devotees. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti also explains that this the Lord appears as if called for. So even if Krishna is not called for, Krishna is under the control of bhakti. So as soon as there is some bhakti somewhere, then Krishna appears as if called for, even if he is not called for. Another point is that Krishna is, or the Lord is called in the name of Tirthapada, the Lord whose lotus feet are the source of all virtues and holiness. So that means that wherever Krishna goes, because he carries the holy places on his lotus feet, then that place becomes a holy place. And not just wherever the Lord goes, but also wherever his devotees go. That place also becomes a holy place, because wherever devotees go, they will chant the holy names. That means that Krishna will appear in that place. That means that place becomes a holy place. And there is a nice pastime of how Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra appeared. Of course, there's many pastimes behind their appearance, but one of them is when Rohini Devi in Dwaraka was talking about Krishna's Bala Lila, Krishna's childhood pastimes. Then Subhadra Devi, Krishna's sister, Krishna and Balaram got so ecstatic that they took on this Jagannath Baladev Subhadra form that we usually see. So even Krishna gets excited, or really excited, hearing his glories. Okay, and then the next few verses is concluding and summarizing whatever Narada Muni was teaching so far. Etadyatura chittanam matrasparshi chayamuhu bhavasindu plavo drishto haricharyanu varnanam. Guru Bhakti?
It is personally experienced by me that those who are always full of cares and anxieties due to desiring contact of the senses with their objects can cross the ocean of nations on a most suitable boat, the constant chanting of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead.
Thank you. So this is Narada concluding and summarizing his instructions by citing his own personal experience. And it's not just Narada's experience that you can cross over the ocean of nescience by chanting the transcendental activities, transcendental pastimes of Krishna, but it can be our experience as well. So if we follow Narada's footsteps, then and chant Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's names, qualities, then we can have the same experience of crossing over the material ocean. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that it's, although kirtan is mentioned here, or chanting, but that's because the kirtan is the main anga, the main item of bhakti, but it applies to all the other, all 9 angas, so Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, all the different aspects of bhakti. And then Prabhupada in the purport explains that materialists, they're in constant anxiety because their chitta, or their consciousness, so there is this chitta, this word chitta, so those whose minds, their consciousness is full of cares and anxiety, so they constantly want to bring the senses in contact with the sense objects, and that creates constant anxiety. So a little bit, when you have a young child and the child wants to have some ice cream, and that creates so much anxiety in the child, maybe even creates a lot of anxiety in the mom. So that's like a very simplistic example, but in one sense that's what happens to all of us who have materially absorbed minds, that we constantly want something, and that creates a lot of anxiety. But the only way to become free from that anxiety is by chanting Krishna's names. That's the boat that can carry us across this ocean of material anxiety. And this is why Narada was so heavy with Vyasadeva, because Vyasadeva didn't emphasize this remedy strongly enough, and he seemed to give too much importance to these dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Does anyone remember what dharma, artha, kama, and moksha is, except for Guru Bhakti? Or one or two of those things, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. What are those things? Brajadevi?
So dharma is religious activities, and then kama is lust or like sense enjoyment. Artha is economic development, and then moksha, liberation.
Yeah. And then the progression is that you do dharma, religion, to get money, to get artha, and they use the money to get kama, and then once you get disgusted with that or frustrated, then you endeavor for moksha. But above these 4 is the 5th, which is called Panchama Purushartha, the 5th interest of human life, and that's bhakti. That's what we should all be aiming for. But well done, Brajadevi. Thank you for remembering. Okay, and then Prabhupada says in the purport that we can't remain inactive, we can't remain silent, but we just need to channel our activities and our speech in a way that it's engaged in Krishna's service, Krishna's glorification. Okay. Yamati vir yoga patai kamalupha hatomuhu mukunda sevaya yadva tathamada shamyati. Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu.
It is true that by practicing restraint of the senses by the yoga system, one can get relief from the disturbances of desire and lust. But this is not sufficient to give satisfaction to the soul, for this satisfaction is derived from devotional service to the personality of Godhead.
Thank you. So there are two things. One thing is becoming free from suffering. So getting relief from the disturbances of desire and lust. That's one thing. But to get actual satisfaction, that's a different thing. So getting free from the miseries, the disturbances of desire and lust, for that you can use the yoga system, you can use jnana, these other processes. But to get actual satisfaction and happiness, that only happens by bhakti, by devotional service. And Prabhupada in the purport speaks about devotional service when it's kind of mixed with other, Prabhupada calls them subordinate processes. When the transcendental devotional service is mixed with a subordinate process, it's no longer transcendental, but it's called mixed devotional service. Srila Vyasadeva, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam, will gradually develop all these different systems of transcendental realization in the text. So I made a slide so it's maybe a little easier to understand. So there are three levels, you could say, of bhakti. The highest level is called pure devotional service, which is sometimes called Shuddha Bhakti, Ananya Bhakti, Kevala Bhakti. Basically, all of these means that it's pure bhakti, it's not mixed with anything else, it's only bhakti. And then one level down is called bhakti mixed with jnana or karma or yoga. The kind of technical name is pradhanibhuta bhakti. So on this level, bhakti is still more, so it's more than 50% bhakti, but there is also a little bit of jnana, karma, yoga, other things. So it's called jnana mishra bhakti. So bhakti mixed with jnana, or karma mishra bhakti, bhakti mixed with karma, or yoga mishra bhakti, bhakti mixed with yoga. And then the lowest level is called gunibhuta bhakti, when there's still bhakti, but bhakti is less than 50%. So the other aspect is more prominent, and that's called bhakti mishra jnana, or jnana mixed with a little bit of bhakti, or bhakti mishra karma, karma mixed with a little bit of bhakti, or bhakti mishra yoga, yoga mixed with a little bit of bhakti. So all of these have bhakti in it, but only the top two are considered bhakti in the sense that they will have a transcendental result, and they are called bhakti by the acharyas, because in the lowest level, this gunibhuta bhakti, the bhakti is only there to make the other process successful. So when we did Bhakti Shastri, we studied Bhagavad Gita, and we learned that without bhakti, even karma or jnana or yoga are not successful. So to attain the result of jnana, you also need a little bit of bhakti at least. So their bhakti is just there to kind of help the other process become successful. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that by this Kevala Bhakti or Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotional service, one can attain the highest destination, go back to Goloka Vrindavan. By this Pradhanibhuta Bhakti, one can attain up to the level of bhava, and or up to Shantarasa or a neutral level, or if one associates with pure devotees, then it can become completely purified, and it can turn into pure bhakti. And then this Bhakti Mishra Jnana or Bhakti Mishra Karma or Yoga. With that, the highest level one can attain is liberation. But then all of these, or at least the lower two, if one associates with pure devotees, then one can so-called purify one's bhakti. It's just depending on what we start practicing, it's very difficult if we have to kind of go back to the beginning and start a almost completely different process. So that's why it's better to kind of start with already start with what we want to end up with. So start with pure devotional service rather than with some mixed process. And like we said, the other processes, jnana, karma, or yoga, they depend on bhakti. There needs to be at least a little bit of bhakti for them to be successful. But bhakti doesn't depend on karma or jnana or yoga. Bhakti includes these. So bhakti involves activity or karma. We can do all sorts of work. Unfortunately, we don't have Bhakti Vinod Prabhu here, but that's him with his flowers. So we can do gardening or cooking or Harinam, book distribution, all sorts of services. So that includes activity. Bhakti also involves knowledge, reading, studying, just like we're doing now, studying Bhakti Vaibhava. And Bhakti also involves meditation or the process of dhyana or yoga. When we are chanting, we're supposed to be absorbed and meditating on the holy names. But all these activities are not the process, they're not a separate process, they are kind of parts of bhakti, they're angas or limbs of bhakti. And the purposes of these karma, jnana, and yoga are not sense enjoyment or liberation or mystic siddhis, but attaining Krishna. So normally karma would involve sense enjoyment, that's the goal. Jnana would want to attain liberation, and yoga would want to attain mystic siddhis. But when it's practiced within bhakti, then that's not the goal. They are all practiced to attain Krishna, to please Krishna. So these activities are subservient to bhakti, and bhakti doesn't depend on them. Did I manage to explain this properly? Is it understandable? Okay. Okay. Let's see the next verse. Sarvam tadidamakhyatam yat prishtoham tvayanaga janma karma rahasyam me bhavataschatma toshanam. Triloka Chaitanya Mataji.
Krishna. Oh, Vyasadeva, you are freed from all sins. Thus I have explained my birth and activities for self-realization as you asked. All this will be conductive for you personal satisfaction also.
Okay, so Narada says that, okay, now I explained the case study. I attained prema, and all this is for your personal satisfaction also. So when we hear about the progress of another devotee or the perfection of another devotee, that should be nourishing to us as well. We should feel excited and happy for them. We shouldn't feel envious or jealous. How come that they're so advanced and I'm not? We should feel inspired that I also would like to attain that, and we should definitely feel happy for them. And Vyasadeva at this point, he's already written the Vedanta Sutras, Mahabharata, Upanishads, and he's also written a kind of abbreviated form or shortened form of the Bhagavatam that he will now revise and expand. We'll kind of discuss that a little bit later in one of the other verses. And because all these books that he's already written, he's still not feeling satisfied. So if the author is not feeling satisfied, then how will the readers be satisfied? That's why he needed to write something that he feels satisfied. Then it will be conducive for his personal satisfaction, and it will be conducive to everyone else's satisfaction as well. And then Prabhupada's purport basically summarizes what we learned so far in chapter 5 and chapter 6. It's really nice purport, so maybe we could even read it out. Ramananda Prabhu, are you able to read this purport here?
The process of devotional activities from the beginning to the stage of transcendence is all duly explained to satisfy the inquirers of Vyasadeva. Narada has explained how the seeds of devotional service were sown by transcendental association and how they gradually developed by hearing the sages. The result of such hearing is detachment from worldliness, so much so that even a small boy could receive the death news of his mother, who was his only caretaker, as the blessing of God. And at once he took the opportunity to search out the Lord. A sincere urge for having an interview with the Lord was also granted to him, although it is not possible for anyone to see the Lord with mundane eyes. He also explained how by execution of pure transcendental service, one can get rid of the fruit of action of accumulated work, and how he transformed his material body into a spiritual one. The spiritual body is alone able to enter into the spiritual realm of the Lord, and no one but a pure devotee is eligible to enter into the kingdom of God. All the mysteries of transcendental realization are duly experienced by Narada Muni himself. And therefore, by hearing such an authority, one can have some idea of the results of devotional life, which are hardly delineated even in the original texts of the Vedas. In the Vedas and Upanishads, there are only indirect hints to all this. Nothing is directly explained there. And therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature fruit of all the Vedic trees of literatures.
Okay, so we can see that how Prabhupada really expertly summarizes all that's been going on so far in basically one paragraph. It's a very deep and very wonderful purport. Okay. So this ends, you could say, the conversation between Vyasadeva and Narada. We said Bhagavatam is a nested conversation, so now Sutta Goswami takes over again. Sutta uvacha evam sambhashya Bhagavan Narado Vasavi Sutam Amancha vinam ranayan yayo yadrichiko muni. Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu?
Sutta Goswami said, thus addressing Vyasadeva, Srila Narada Muni took leave of him, and verbatim in Shila is free.
Okay, so the connection wasn't great. I don't know whether it's on my side or yours, but so Sri Narada Muni took leave of him, and vibrating on his Vina instrument, he left to wander at his free will. Prabhupada, in the purport, he mostly speaks about this yadrichiko, wherever willing, or his free will, or freedom. He speaks about this freedom. He says that every living entity is anxious for full freedom because that's our transcendental nature. But we are restricted in every stage of our life. So when you're a child, you feel you are so restricted. Your mom doesn't let you eat, ice cream at 11 o'clock at night. Or why doesn't she let you stay up and watch videos or whatever. And then as you're growing up, then school restricts you. You have to go there every day and you have to behave and you study. And then when you grow up even more, then you have to go to work and you have to pay your mortgage and you have to pay taxes and whatever. There's always some restriction in life. The freedom only comes through spiritual life, through transcendental life. But in the beginning, we may even feel that that's restrictive. There is these regulative principles, and we have to chant round instead of doing what we want to do. These principles are called regulative principles of freedom in the Bhagavad Gita, because by following these principles, this is how we actually become free, because these principles free us from the bondage of karma. So this is the way to freedom. And Prabhupada says a full-fledged free soul like Narada, always engaged in chanting Krishna's glories, is free to move not only on earth, but also in any part of the universe, in the spiritual sky. We can't even imagine the unlimitedness of his freedom, which is as much as the freedom of Krishna. So the only way to become truly free is to become a pure devotee. And then there is another interesting point Prabhupada makes in the purport. He says that in all spheres of devotional service, freedom is the main pivot. So devotional service is supposed to be out of our free will. It shouldn't be something that's forced or pushed on us, because then that loses the surrender. Surrender should be that out of our free will we surrender to Krishna. That's why Prabhupada says that without freedom there is no execution of devotional service. The freedom surrender to the Lord doesn't mean that the devotee becomes dependent in every respect. To surrender unto the Lord through the transparent medium of the spiritual master is to attain complete freedom of life. So we need to understand that unless we have our freedom, we can't surrender it to Krishna. We can't surrender it out of our free will. Prabhupada in this purport really emphasizes this freedom. He says that transcendental system of devotional service is free, and it may or may not develop. And in every sphere of devotional service, freedom is the main pivot. Unless there is freedom, there is no devotional service. Okay. Let's see the last verse of this chapter. Aho deva shirdhanyoyam yat kirtim shan gadan vanaha gayam madyanidam tanchara mayathyaturam jagat. Nilacha Chandra Prabhu?
All glories and success to Srila Narada Muni, because he glorifies the activities of the personality of Godhead. And so doing, he himself takes pleasure and also enlivens all the distressed souls of the universe.
Thank you. So, because Narada loves glorifying Krishna, it gives him so much pleasure, it gives Krishna so much pleasure, then whoever hears him, it also gives them a lot of pleasure. So it enlivens all the distressed souls of the universe. So when one is feeling happy in Krishna consciousness, they can share it with others, and then others will feel the same happiness. When they speak, then it's coming from the heart, and it touches the heart of other people. If we speak from the intellect, it can touch the intellect of others. And if we speak from the heart, it touches the heart of other people. So when Narada Muni glorifies Krishna, then he is happy, Krishna is happy, and all those who hear him also become happy. Prabhupada says in the purport that no one is happy within the universe, and what is felt as happiness is Maya's illusion, because no one can be truly happy within this world. The only happiness comes from glorifying Krishna. So our mission is to experience this happiness and share it with others as well. Of course, even if you just do it out of duty, that's better than nothing. But the ideal thing is to experience the happiness, relish Krishna consciousness, and then share it with others as well, so they can experience the same happiness. Okay, so this concludes chapter 6. Are there any points, questions, Braja Devi?
Hare Krishna. I was thinking about the previous verse where, like, it says that Narad Muni is like he's traveling out of his free will, but I also heard that he was cursed to not having a fixed place. So how to understand the two? Like, is it like before being cursed he was like traveling at his free will, or is?
He was always traveling by his free will, but where he's cursed is described that Narada actually took it as a blessing. So sometimes what happens is people do things thinking that this is going to hurt the other person, but somehow it becomes a blessing. And then, of course, sometimes when great sages curse, then they are already curse with the mentality that ultimately it will become a blessing. Like when Nalakubar and Manigriva were cursed to become cheese, that was with the intention that they can become liberated by Krishna. But there's an example we'll study in more depth later on. So in the beginning of the in the beginning of the third canto, Duryodhan basically kicks out Vidura from the from the Kauravas' palace. So Duryodhan does it with a malicious intent. He says, you're just giving us advice, but you're actually an enemy and you want our, destruction. But because you've been serving the Kauravas for so many decades, we won't kill you. We'll leave you with the breath in your nostrils, but otherwise you're kicked out. So Duryodhan intends this as a punishment, you could say. He intends it as a curse. But for Vidura, he takes it as a blessing because he doesn't want to get involved. The Kurukshetra war is just coming up. He would have to fight on the Kauravas side against the Pandavas. So for him, even though it was intended as a curse, it's a blessing. And it's a similar thing with Narada being cursed, that he can't stay in one place, but he takes it as a blessing. And it happens quite often. And sometimes even in our own lives, we can experience this, that something that maybe someone did with bad intentions ends up actually helping us progress in devotional service if we take it in the right devotional mood. Does this answer the question? Is it okay?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Anything else? Okay, so let's move on to chapter 7. This is entitled The Son of Drona Punished. So son of Drona is Ashwatthama. And that will be most of the chapter. But in the beginning of the chapter, it just continues this point, the story we've been hearing so far. So Narada told Vyasadeva that you are completely qualified. You should meditate on Krishna's pastimes in trance and write about them. So this is what Vyasadeva will do. This is the first maybe 10-15 verses of this chapter. Shunaka uvacha nirgate narade sutta bhagavan badarayanaha shutavam stadabi pretam tata kim akarod vibhu. Charanarenu Mataji?
Rishi Sonakas, so certain, great and transcendentally powerful Vyasdev, heard everything from Sri Narada Muni. So after Narada's departure, what did Vyasadeva do?
Thank you. So remember, the first 3 chapters of the first canto were answers to the 6 questions asked in chapter 1. And then once Sutta Goswami answered those questions, the sages asked 4 more questions. Anyone remembers what the 4 questions are about? Or some of the 4 questions?
So they ask about the Srimad Bhagavatam history.
Mm-hmm.
They ask about Maharaj Parikshit. They also ask about Shri Swami.
Yeah, so basically the history of the Bhagavatam. So why did Vyasadeva write it? Where did he get the inspiration from? So that was mostly already answered by the story of how he was dissatisfied, and then Narada came, explained to him why he's dissatisfied, and instructed him to write the Bhagavatam, even though he's already written so many books. This will actually satisfy him. So that's the history of the Bhagavatam. We'll also hear about Shukadev Goswami. He was already a self-realized sage. Why did he undergo the trouble of hearing the Bhagavatam? speaking the learning the Bhagavatam and speaking the Bhagavatam, and after that we'll start hearing about Parikshit, his birth and activities. Why did he renounce, and how did he end up being the hearer of the Bhagavatam? Sutta uvacha brahmananyam sarasvatyam ashrama paschimedate samya prashaiti prokta rishinam satravardanaha. Brajadevi?
Sri Sutta said, on the western bank of the river Saraswati, which is intimately related with the Vedas, there is a cottage for meditation at Samya Prasa, which enlivens the transcendental activities of the sages.
Thank you. So it's described this Brahmanadhyam on the bank of a river intimately related with the Vedas, Brahmanas, saints, and the lords. So Nadyam means river, but Brahma can mean Vedas, Brahmanas, sages, Lord Brahma, truth, austerity, progenitor. So we said the Sanskrit words have so many different meanings. So that's why it says that Brahmanadhyam can mean a river related to Vedas, Brahmanas, saints, the lords. So basically it's a very holy place. So Vyasadeva is sitting here at his ashram, meditating. Prabhupada in the purport explains about what ashram is. So ashram is not whether it's sannyasis or brahmacharis live there or householders. It's where spiritual life is cultivated. Prabhupada says, an ashram is a place where spiritual culture is foremost. It doesn't matter whether the place belongs to a householder or a mendicant. So that's what makes something an ashram, that spiritual life is cultivated there. Okay. Okay, and then brahmacharis, sannyasis, they kind of externally and internally renounced. Householders, you could say they are internally renounced, but externally they may not look as renounced. But the renunciation, at least the internal renunciation and the cultivation of spiritual life is common in all ashrams, or the goal of life, priority is spiritual life. Okay, so in 1.5.13, Narada told Vyasadeva to remember the Lord's pastimes in trance, and now this is what Vyasadeva is doing. So he's sitting there for meditation, and now we will hear what he sees in his meditation. Tasmin sva ashrame vyaso badari sandamandite asino paupasprishya pranithatyo manah svayam. Swarup Damodar Prabhu?
In that place, Srila Vyasadeva, in his own ashram, which was surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification.
Okay, so to help everyone kind of understand the situation, get in the mood, this is Vyasadeva meditating. Okay, so you can, or kind of get this picture in our mind, and now we'll hear what he sees in his meditation. Here is the Badari tree and all the holy river. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranite male apashyat purusham purnam mayam chata dapashrayam. Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu?
And I can't see actually the screen.
Oh.
Okay, it's kind of came up now, so let's try it. Thus he fixed his mind, perfectly engaging it by linking it in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any tinge of materialism. And thus he saw the absolute personality of Godhead, along with his external energy, which was under full control.
Thank you. So he sees the absolute personality of Godhead, the Lord, and he also sees his external energy. But the external energy is under the full control of the Lord. So first of all, he's fixed when he's doing his meditation. He's not distracted by anything, or there's no contamination. He's completely fixed. completely linked in this Bhakti Yoga with no tinge of materialism. And he sees the Supreme Lord, but he doesn't just see the Supreme Lord, he says Purusham Purnam. So Purusham means the Supreme Lord, and Purnam means complete or absolute. So Prabhupada, the Acharyas explain that this means that he sees the Supreme Lord along with his different energies. It's Maya, this external energy is specifically mentioned, but Maya also is under his full control. Okay, and then Prabhupada in the purport, he explains that this seeing this Purusham Purnam doesn't just mean that with all his energies, but it also means that all the different aspects, the Brahman, impersonal Brahman realization, the localized Paramatma realization, they're also all included in this Purusham Purnam, but they are kind of lower stages. They are not full, they are not Purnam, whereas Krishna or Bhagavan is full. But this vision of Krishna also includes not just Brahman and Paramatma, but also the different incarnations, Ram, Varaha, Nishinga. Of course, Vyasadeva writes about them later in the Bhagavatam. So all this is there. So what Vyasadeva is seeing now, I'd like you to kind of just keep this in mind. What Vyasadeva is seeing now is, you could say, a summary of the Bhagavatam. So he's seeing this vision, and then he will write the 18,000 verses of the Bhagavatam, kind of expanding on and explaining what he sees, this vision. Okay. So he sees the Supreme Lord, Krishna, Purusham Purnam, and then he sees his different energies. So Antaranga Shakti, or the internal potency, Tatashta Shakti, which is the living entities. He will explain a little bit more about in what situation the living entities are. And then the external potency, or Mayam Chadat Apashrayam, he also sees the external energy. Okay. And then what else he sees? Yaya sammohito jiva atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manute nartam tatkritam cha vipadyate. Nilacha Chandra Prabhu?
Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product, and thus undergoes the reaction of material miseries.
Okay, so he saw the Lord and his energies, and one of the energies is the living entity, the jiva. But whereas the Supreme Lord is in full control of the energies, the living entity is under full control of the material energy. So that's the big difference between the Supreme Lord and the energy. So he sees this setup, and he also sees this is the reason for the living entity suffering. The reason is that he's under the control of the material energy and is identifying himself with the material energy. So it's a little bit like the doctor diagnosing the patient. So, if you have some disease and you go to the doctor and they order some blood test or an X-ray, and then from the blood test, they can see what's wrong with you, or they look at the X-ray and they can see what's wrong with you. So this is very similar what Vyasadeva is, not very similar, but it's maybe an illustration of explaining what Vyasadeva did, that he had this vision. I guess that was the blood test or the X-ray, and he could understand what's the cause of the disease, what's the cause of the suffering. The cause of the disease, cause of the suffering is that the living entity thinks himself as a material product. So instead of understanding I'm a spirit soul, I'm Krishna's eternal servant, I should act in that capacity and identify as such, he identifies as a material product and he tries to act as such, and that creates the disease. And then this is what Prabhupada explains. It's a kind of quite a long purport, but Prabhupada basically explains this principle, and he also explains the role of the external energy, that the illusory energy kind of punishes the conditioned souls. He calls this as a thankless task, keeping the forgotten soul under illusion. So this is the service of the external energy, to keep conditioned souls conditioned, but not because Krishna likes to torture us, but because because we have free will, and that's how we want to identify as. And in the later verses, it will be explained how there is a way to come out of this, and this is also actually part of Krishna's plan, how to come out this material energy. So Prabhupada says, the affectionate father doesn't like his children to be chastised by another agent, but he puts the disobedient children under the custody of a severe man just to bring them to order. So maybe the child is very naughty and doesn't listen to the father. So then the father brings in some strict man to make sure that he studies or that he behaves. And he does it ultimately to kind of benefit the child. But still, that severe man, that very strict man, the child maybe not immediately, doesn't immediately understand that it's for his ultimate benefit. Okay. And then Prabhupada also speaks about the surrendering process and what is the way of overcoming. In one sense, only the next verse explains how to overcome this illusory energy, but Prabhupada already explains it in this verse, that this illusory energy is very stiff to overcome. One who surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord is set free by the order of the Supreme. So surrender, bhakti, that's the way to get out of the suffering. So if we go for this analogy of the doctor diagnosing the, sorry, we need the next slides. Yeah. So the doctor diagnosing the disease from the x-ray. Okay, this is the disease. So if this is the disease, then this is the prescription that you need. This is the medicine you need. And the prescription or the medicine is surrender, devotional service. So this is a simplified way of explaining it, but this is what's happening in Vyasadev's meditation. He sees the Lord with all his energies. He sees the living entity, how the living entity is under the control of the external energy and is suffering because of this control. And the way to get rid of this suffering is a prescription of a good dose of devotional service. That's how you get out of the suffering. And there are two ways in which Krishna is directing us or helping us. I hope I can... Yeah, it's here. This means that the conditioned souls are being reclaimed by the Lord both ways, namely by the process of punishment by the external energy of the Lord, and by himself as the spiritual master within and without. So within the heart of every living entity, there is the Lord himself as the super soul, comes the spiritual master. He also comes in the shape of scripture, saints, initiator, spiritual master. So these are the two ways in which Krishna comes to help us. So you could say this confused man with all the question marks, that represents us. And then one aspect is punishment of the external energy. So wars, suffering, mugging, death, disease, bullying, all sorts of horrible things, that depression, loneliness, all the horrible things that happen in the world. They are there to kind of make us understand and remind us that this is not a happy place. We'll never be happy in this world. This is not our home, just so we don't become too comfortable. So this is one aspect. And the other aspect is the spiritual teaching, Sadhu, Guru, Shastra, the super soul. So Krishna comes, this is the negative, and then this is the positive. So these are the two ways in which Krishna is helping us. And this is also kind of emphasizes the big difference between the jiva and the Lord. The jiva is under the control of the external energy, and the Lord is the controller of the external energy. So for the jiva to come out of the control of the external energy is by surrendering to the Lord, who's the controller of the external energy. Okay. Another point is, remember how Narada told Vyasadeva that you should describe Krishna's pastimes in great detail. You should speak a lot more about that. So why is all this thing about the material energy and the material world? Why is this? Why is he saying this in his vision? Why is he describing in the third canto? There is a whole series of chapters about the creation, and other cantos as well. Second canto will also have that, and third canto we also have Sankhya Yoga teachings of Kapila Dev. You know, the all sorts of detailed descriptions of the living entity's sufferings from being in the womb to all the way to being taken by the Yamadutas to the hellish planet. So what does that got to do with Krishna's pastimes? Why is all this? Why are all these descriptions there? Charanarenu?
So you're going back to the analogy of the doctor diagnosing the disease and then a prescription. So Vyasadeva seeing all the material suffering in the material world, and when you understand, what the problem is, then the remedy can be more potent.
Yeah, more readily accepted. Yeah. Yeah, that's the answer. Thank you. So unless we understand that we are in a diseased condition, unless the doctor shows us the X-ray or explains the blood test results, then we don't understand that that's the reason for our suffering. So that's why there's quite lengthy descriptions. But then once we kind of understand, then in the 10th canto, we have wonderful, sweet Krishna Lila. And even earlier, in the beginning of third canto, there's quite a lot about Krishna's pastimes. In the first canto, we'll also have, starting actually from this chapter 7, quite a lot of very sweet pastimes of Krishna. So then we can taste the sweetness. There's this example that when somebody's got jaundice, they can't taste sugar, they can't taste sweet things, even though the sweetness is what will cure them. So just as somebody suffering with jaundice cannot taste sweetness, those who are suffering with the material disease cannot taste the sweetness of Krishna Katha. But Krishna Katha is the remedy, just as sugar is the remedy for jaundice, Krishna Katha is the remedy for the material disease. Okay? And Prabhupada already explained this in this purport, but in the verses, we'll just come to that. So in the Sutta Goswami's explanation, we'll just come to that. Anartopashamam sakshat bhakti yoga madakshaji lokasya janato vidvams chakre satvata samhitam. Triloka Chaitanya Mataji.
The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotional service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled the Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth.
Thank you. So here is Sutta Goswami giving that medicine that Prabhupada already described in the previous pastimes. So anartha means that which is superfluous or unwanted, unnecessary. So this is our conditioned state. And this can be directly mitigated. We can basically get rid of this by the devotional service, by Bhakti Yoga. So this is, but people don't know this, and that's why, so they've compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam that to tell people that only Bhakti will reconnect you with Krishna, only through Bhakti you can get rid of your suffering, only through Bhakti you can attain real happiness. Okay. And then Prabhupada gives a really, I thought it was a very touching sentence here in the purport. He says, revival of the dormant affection or love of Godhead doesn't depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting, but it solely and wholly depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. So, of course, we hear and chant, and that's how we kind of try to show our sincerity, but ultimately it depends on Krishna's mercy. So, our effort is our way of showing our sincerity, our desire, our eagerness to Krishna. But ultimately, it doesn't depend on our hearing and chanting. It's not like pressing a button and then we get a result. But it's only when Krishna decides to give us his mercy. And the mechanical system can also refer to, once we chanted so many rounds, once we get to our 200,056th round, then we'll attain pure devotion. So it doesn't depend on quantity, it depends on quality. It depends on our attitude, and our pure, sincere, helpless, devotional attitude will attract Krishna's mercy. So if that right attitude is there, then our hearing and chanting will attract Krishna. And then Prabhupada says, but even with the prescribed forms of hearing and chanting, there is at once mitigation of the superfluous and unwanted miseries of material existence. So even before we get Krishna's full mercy and attain Krishna Prema, love of God, even at the stage of Vaidhi Bhakti, or the prescribed way of hearing and chanting, already we become free from these superfluous, unwanted miseries. So if you remember when we studied Nectar of Devotion in Bhakti Shastri, there were two symptoms of sadhana bhakti, two things that happen at the stage of sadhana bhakti. Anyone remembers those? There was altogether 6, and 2 of them appear at the stage of sadhana bhakti.
Was one of them Subhada?
Yeah, one of them is Subhada. Do you know what Subhada is in English?
Like all auspiciousness.
Yeah, happiness, all auspiciousness. And what's the other one? Charanarenu, I can see you know.
I was going to say, the one that I know is the all auspiciousness, happiness.
Okay. Anyone?
Is it relief from miseries?
Relief from miseries, yeah, exactly. So it's called Kleshagni. So Kleshagni and Subhada, these are the first 2 things that appear at the stage of sadhana bhakti. So even at the stage of prescribed hearing and chanting, like Prabhupada says here, then one becomes free from these material miseries. Okay. Let's see the next verse. Yasyam vaishuyamananam manayam Krishne paramapurushe bhaktir utpadyate pumsa shokamoha bhayapaha. Ramananda Prabhu.
Simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness.
Thank you. So by hearing the Bhagavatam, this feeling of devotional service will be invoked in the heart of the jiva. And bhakti is for Krishna, and this bhakti indicates prema. So the 3 things that this prema or bhakti, feeling of devotion, feeling for loving devotion, extinguishes in the heart is this lamentation, shoka, illusion, moha, and fearfulness, or bhaya. So these are extinguished in the heart. But that's not the end product of bhakti. That's not the reason why we do devotional service, to become free from lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. That's a byproduct. That's not very important. Like we said in the previous purport, Prabhupada said that even by the sadhana bhakti, even by the prescribed hearing and chanting, these things disappear. But as we hear Srimad Bhagavatam more and more, as we engage others in hearing, and eventually as we help others not just hear Srimad Bhagavatam, but also speak Srimad Bhagavatam, then progressively it has more and more effect. And then Prabhupada in the purport glorifies this process of hearing. He says that there are various senses of which the ear is most effective. This sense works even when a man is deep asleep. One can protect himself from the hands of an enemy while awake, but while asleep one is only protected by the ear. So that's why the importance of hearing is mentioned. This is the one organ that's always working. And this hearing is connected with getting the ultimate benefit, or love of Krishna. Charana Renu?
Just thinking, because it says simply by giving oral reception, feeling for loving devotion service to Lord Krishna sprouts at once, and then in the previous purport, Papa is saying, it's not just by, mechanically. So, so the simply by giving oral reception, it goes to say that it's not mechanic, that there's a quality to it, that it's not like, we just hear and then feeling for loving devotional service to Krishna sprouts at once. Or is there a time, I don't know, is there a time lapse? It's there, but or is the...
It still depends on Krishna's mercy. So it's not like it says simply by giving oral reception, because that's what we can do, simply by hearing about Krishna. But to have the loving devotional service of Krishna manifest, for that you need Krishna's mercy. So you can kind of, by your own effort, and of course by mercy of Krishna and devotees, you can get up to the level of bhava. But to actually get bhava and to get prema, you need Krishna's mercy. So that's not really emphasized in this translation, but it's definitely there. I don't know if Ramananda Prabhu wants to kind of add more to this.
This is from one of Shivaram Maharaj's books, Sankalpa Kamudi, and he's talking about, he says, in response to the first doubt about the definition of sadhana, which was how spiritual bhakti is generated by physical actions. In summary, our answer is, bhakti is not generated by physical acts. Rather, a devotee's senses and activities are surcharged with the devotion radiating from his heart. And it is that devotion which transforms activities into devotional service in proportion to the nature of the practitioner's faith. So it's he's kind of talking about how, as we hear and chant, just a second, just shush a sec. As we hear and chant more and more, then our own faith increases, and as our faith increases, then the sort of external activities, the so-called mechanical activities, they become more and more sort of activated by what's actually going on in our heart. So it's not the external physical things that necessarily wins Krishna's heart, but it's more our own heart and our own faith and our own desire that is kind of, the external activities are like a manifestation of what's actually going on in the heart. So it's not the mechanical activities that win Krishna, but It's what's in the heart of the devotee, and what's in the heart of the devotee increases more and more and more as they hear more and more and more about Krishna. So although it seems mechanical, the mechanical activity increases our faith. I don't know if that makes sense or if that gives any light on it.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, it does.
Okay. And then one more point in Prabhupada's purport, he is explaining that these peace conferences and politicians trying to attain a peaceful situation, it will never happen. Material solutions can't solve material problems. It's only by hearing the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, this false complexity of materialism is removed and real peace in society begins. So that's the only thing that will solve the world's problems, because otherwise, even if there are apparent solutions or seeming solutions, they just create more and more problems. Okay. So samhitam bhagavatim kritvanu chatmajam shukam adhyapayamasa nivritti niratam munihi. Varjadevi?
The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Shukadev Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization.
Okay. So these last maybe 3-4 verses, that was the vision of Vyasadeva, and that was the kind of Srimad Bhagavatam in a capsule. It was the essence of the Bhagavatam was there, and then later on he will explain it in more detail. How the material energy works, Krishna's sweetness, how the devotional service or bhakti is the solution to all the material miseries, then the process of bhakti, all the trials, tribulations, and successes of practicing devotees, those on the path of bhakti. So this is what we'll hear in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Vyasadeva already compiled a version of the Srimad Bhagavatam by this point, but then on Narada's instruction, he revised it. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Vyasadeva wrote an abbreviated book on bhakti, and then he revised it on the advice of Narada. And this word Kritva Anukramya. So we have here Kritva Anukramya. So Kritva means having done, and Anukramya means by correction and repetition. So it means that he kind of corrected what he's already written. And another interesting point Prabhupada says in the purport, he says, although it is especially meant for the Paramahamsas, or those who are totally engaged in self-realization, it works into the depths of the hearts of those who may be worldly men. So Bhagavatam is sometimes called Paramahamsa Samhita, the scripture for Paramahamsas, the highest level of devotees, but it also works for materialists. So it's a very special book that everybody can get from it what they need. We had a similar verse in 1.5.40 where Narada Muni tells Vyasadeva, please therefore describe the Almighty Lord's activities which you have heard by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of great learned men and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering. So this is usually, if you get a maths textbook, it's either for grade 1 or it's for university. You don't get a maths textbook that's both for grade 1 and university. It's either too boring for the university students or the grade 1 students don't understand anything. But the Bhagavatam is this magic book that everybody can get from it what they need. Okay. And then Prabhupada in the purport, he also speaks about the paths of Nivritti Marg and Pravritti Marg. Does anyone know what these two expressions mean, Nivritti Marg and Pravritti Marg? So nivritti means the path of renunciation, giving up the material world, and pravritti marg means the path of enjoying the material world or enjoying life. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the science for following the path of nivritti marg or renunciation. The path of pravritti marg was condemned by Narada. So this pravritti marg of karma kanda, trying to do some pious religious activities so I can enjoy this world. Okay. So now this is Sutta Goswami was speaking, and now Shonaka Rishi, the kind of leader of the sages at Naimisharanya, he's asking another question. He's basically just reiterating the question he already asked about Shukadev Goswami. Shonaka uvacha savai nivritti nirata sarvato pekshako muni kasya vabrihatim etam atmarama samapyasat. Charanarenu?
Sri Shonika asked Goswami. Sri Shukadev Goswami was already on the path of self-realization, and thus he was pleased with his own self. So why did he take the trouble to undergo the study of such a vast literature?
So this is a very relevant question. He says, Shukadev Goswami, who was already Atmarama, he was already satisfied in the self, meaning he didn't need any external object, stimulus, anything from the external world to be happy. So why did he take the trouble to study such a huge, vast literature like the Srimad Bhagavatam if he was already satisfied, happy within himself? Usually we do things to attain some happiness or to get some relief from some suffering. But Shukadev Goswami was already not suffering, so there was no need for him to become free from any suffering. He was already very happy and satisfied, just Atmarama, just satisfied in his self. So what was the reason for him making this huge effort, this huge endeavor? So this is the question, and the answer will be this very famous Atmarama verse, what is called an Atmarama verse. Oh yeah, and Prabhupada in the purport speaks about how different types of people are looking for pleasure in different ways. Karmis, mainly speaks about karmis, but also jnanis, yogis. Okay, but Atmaramas are in different world. So this is the Atmarama verse. This is the answer to this question. Why do Atmaramas study the Bhagavatam? Sutta uvacha Atmaramascha munayo nirgranta pyurukrame kurvantya haitu kim bhaktim ittam bhuta gunohari. Guru Bhakti?
Sutta Goswami said, "O different varieties of Atmaramas, those who take pleasure in the Atma or spirit self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though free from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls."
Okay, so this is basically the answer, saying that, okay, even though Shukadev Goswami was an Atmarama, but even Atmaramas, even self-satisfied people take or get happiness from Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's qualities, from Krishna's service. So you can be a completely self-satisfied Atmarama, but you can get something even higher by hearing about Krishna, speaking about Krishna, serving Krishna. So that's the answer. But this is a very deep verse. Prabhupada gives quite a long purport, and it's based on the 24th chapter of the Madhya Lila in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya gives 61 explanations of this verse. And then earlier also in the 6th chapter of the Madhya Lila, then Lord Chaitanya gives 18 different explanations to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And the way all these explanations come about is that there are 11 words in the Atmarama verse. So these words are Atmarama, Munaya, Nirgranta, Api, Cha, Urukrama, Kurvanti, Ahaitukim, Bhaktim, and Ittam Bhutam Guno, and Hari. And then each of these words have so many different meanings. So he says, according to the Sanskrit dictionary, Atma can mean Brahman, body, mind, endeavor, endurance, intelligence, personal habits. If you remember last week, we looked at one of the verses where it said that Narada, little Narada, when he was 5 years old, he was sitting under a banyan tree and he was meditating on the super soul by his own self. So, Atman, Atmanam, Atmastam. So in that verse, each Atma has a different meaning. So you can see Atma has so many meanings. And then the word Munaya can mean those who are thoughtful, those who are grave and silent, ascetics, the persistent, mendicants, sages, saints. Nirgranta can have so many meanings. Ni in Nirgranta has all these different meanings. And it's interesting that some meanings can be complete opposites. So Nirgranta can mean a capitalist, somebody is very rich, and also someone who's penniless. It can mean someone who's liberated from nescience, meaning has knowledge, or an illiterate fool, depending on which meaning of ni you take in the Nirgranta. And then Urukrama, that refers to Krishna. So when you take all these different words, you take the 11 words and take all their different meanings and combine them together, then you get all sorts of different meanings for this Atmarama verse. But ultimately, all the different meanings conclude in one point, that whoever you are, whatever you are, you will get the highest happiness, the highest pleasure from Krishna's pastimes, even Atmaramas, even those who are satisfied in the self. And then Prabhupada speaks about how people, there are many causes for happiness or sense gratification, and they may be chiefly classified as material enjoyment, what karmis want, mystic powers, what yogis want, and liberation, what jnanis want. And then Prabhupada explains that, there are so many different kinds of mystic powers, 5 different kinds of liberations, but hearing about Krishna is above them all. And then he speaks about the progress of unalloyed devotional service, or Anyabhilasita Shunyam Gyana Karma, that's pure devotional service. And he says that first, it's a practice of devotional service in the material field is of 81 different qualities. This is just the 3 modes, goodness, passion, ignorance, combined with the 3 modes. So that's 3 times 3, that's 9. And again, combine the 3 modes. So like goodness, passion, or goodness, passion, ignorance, or goodness, ignorance. So all these different varieties, they come to 81 different varieties. But once one becomes liberated from these modes, that's the transcendental practice of devotional service. And that gradually develops into 9 progressive stages under the headings of attachment, love, affection, feelings, affinity, adherence, following, ecstasy, and intense feelings of separation. So these are kind of English translations of different stages of prema. So prema, sneha, I don't know them all, but these are different levels. And then Prabhupada says that the first level of prema, it develops up to the stage of transcendental inactive devotee. So that refers to Shanta Bhakta. Then an active servitor develops up to the stage of adherence, which is the, 5th, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th level. And then friendly devotees develops up to the stage of following, and like that. So this is what these refer to, the different levels of prema. And devotees in conjugal love, madhurya bhaktas, they develop up to this intense feelings of separation. Okay, and then Prabhupada gives other examples of liberated people, like not just Shukadev Goswami, who was Atmarama, but other, for example, the Kumaras, the 4 Kumaras who were also liberated. That's how they could go to Vaikuntha. But then by smelling the fragrance of the tulasi from Lord Narayan's lotus feet, then they turned into pure devotees. So even they were attracted to the fragrance of the Lord's lotus feet. Shukadev Goswami was attracted to hearing the Bhagavatam like that. Okay. And then Prabhupada concludes Prabhupada says that adding, so we have all these different meanings, combine them all together, so many different meanings, and adding to these the words api and cha, one can increase the imports unlimitedly. According to Sanskrit grammar, there are 7 synonyms to the words api. So if you kind of multiply all these together, there's some unlimited different varieties of meanings. But by interpreting each and every word of this shloka, one can see the unlimited numbers of transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna that attract the mind of a pure devotee. So that's the conclusion. That the conclusion is that Krishna's qualities are so attractive that they attract the mind of everyone, even Atmaramas and even pure devotees. Okay, Charanarenu, you got something?
Just where it says about an alloyed devotional service for Lord progresses in different stages. The practice of devotional service in the material field is fate qualities. And then it says above such activities is the transcendental practice of devotional service, which is one, and it's called sadhana bhakti. So I was thinking, well, sadhana bhakti is like the start of devotional service, and it isn't necessarily pure. It can be mixed. I was just a bit confused because I was thinking sadhana bhakti is, it says that the practice of devotional such activities is a transcendental practice of devotional service, which is one, and is called sadhana bhakti. So my understanding of sadhana bhakti was that it's practicing hearing and chanting, but we still have maybe material desires, or we're not pure in heart yet, but we're just practicing, and that's sadhana bhakti. But if that makes sense.
So sadhana bhakti means regulative devotional service, and one doesn't necessarily have a pure heart, but one has a pure intention, in the sense that one's goal is to please Krishna. Or so the heart may not be pure, but the intention is pure. And that's how it can be called transcendental practice of devotional service, because it's above the modes, in the sense that its goal is not within the material world. Its goal is not within the modes. In the third canto, Kapila Dev describes devotional service within the modes, which you could say refers to these 81 different qualities, like devotional service in the mode of ignorance, when one does bhakti with the goal to take revenge on someone or to hurt other people, or one devotional service in the mode of passion, when one does bhakti to get prestige and power. So those are within the material field. But this transcendental practice of sadhana bhakti refers to when the heart may not be purified, but the goal is purified. Does that answer, or?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Ramananda Prabhu, you got something?
Well, I'm just wondering, because I'm looking at this paragraph and I'm wondering about the context of it. So Prabhupada says practice of devotional service in the material field is of 81 different qualities, and above such activities, the transcendental practice of devotional service, and then he says is called sadhana bhakti. I'm just wondering if the two things that Prabhupada's referring to there are, in the first part, in the material field, is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, and then in the second part is Raganuga sadhana bhakti, which is more sort of advanced and deeper, and because they're both sadhana, they're both regulated practice, but they're of different qualities. And I'm just wondering if that's what Prabhupada's referring to, or if I'm misreading it.
Whether Vaidhi or Raganuga, they both refer to sadhana bhakti is when the goal is to, that's the definition of sadhana bhakti, to kind of practice of devotional service by the senses to attain bhava. So then the goal is pure, whether Vaidhi or Raganuga. And then Prabhupada says in the next sentence, he says, when unalloyed practice of sadhana bhakti is matured into transcendental love for God, that refers to when sadhana bhakti turns into bhava bhakti. So these are just the three stages of sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti. So sadhana bhakti is kind of before the devotee is completely above the modes, and bhava bhakti when a ray of transcendence or ray of Krishna's mercy descends into the heart and softens the heart. That's bhava bhakti. That's when one goes above the modes. Guru Bhakti, do you have something?
Yes, I don't know if I maybe didn't listen very well or like lost concentration, but I didn't understand about the 81 varieties of devotional service. What, how come, what are exactly the 81 varieties of devotional service? According to the verse of Atmarama, all the meanings of the verse combined, but not very clear.
That refers to when Prabhupada says practice of devotional service in the material world is of 81 different qualities. That refers to the three modes of nature, goodness, passion, ignorance. That's like three varieties. And then it's not just pure goodness, pure passion, or pure ignorance, but like passion mixed with a bit of ignorance. That's 3 times 3, that makes it 9. And then passion is mixed with a bit of ignorance and then a bit of goodness as well. That's 3 times 3 times 3. That's 81. So it's just, this 81 refers to the combinations of the modes. So that doesn't refer, there's a 61 meanings that Lord Chaitanya explains to Sanatana Goswami, but that's different from these 81 different qualities. Is this okay, Guru Bhakti, or? Okay. Okay. So let's, are there any more questions relating to this, or can we move on? Okay. So the next verse, Harir Gunakshipta Matir Bhagavan Badarayani Adyagan Mahadakyanam Nityam Vishnu Janapriyaha. Ramananda Prabhu?
Srila Shukadev Goswami, son of Srila Vyasadeva, was not only transcendently powerful, he was also very dear to the devotees of the Lord. Thus, he underwent the study of this great narration, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay, so last verse ended with Ittam Bhuta Gunohari. This verse starts with Harir Gunakshita Matir. So even they are attracted to Krishna's qualities. And then because Shukadev Goswami is attracted to the transcendental attributes, transcendental qualities of Krishna, then he becomes very dear to the devotees of the Lord, and the devotees of the Lord are also very dear to him. So Vyasadeva realized the sweetness of Krishna's pastimes by hearing from Narada. Shukadev realized the sweetness even more by hearing from Vyasadeva. And then both Vyasadeva and Narada were there sitting when Shukadev Goswami recited the Bhagavatam to Parikshit, and they were completely mesmerized by hearing Krishna's pastimes from Shukadev Goswami, who was their disciple or grand-disciple. So Bhagavatam just becomes more and more tasty the more you hear it. And then once, as devotees taste the Bhagavatam, they become more and more dear to other devotees. That's how it says Nityam Vishnu Jana Priya. So Vishnu Jana are the devotees of the Lord, and Priya means beloved. So he became beloved of the devotees of the Lord, and also the devotees became very dear to him. So this is how we can cultivate a relationship with devotees, by cultivating a relationship with Krishna. So if we are attracted to Krishna, if we are connected to Krishna, then we also become attractive to other devotees. We also become connected to other devotees. We become more appreciative of Vaishnava's good qualities, and this is a good way to cultivate Vaishnava relationships. Okay, so it says that, if I can find it, Prabhupada basically explains that he says practically he was thrown from the impersonal conception of the absolute, thinking within himself that he had just wasted time, and he became kind of this Vishnu Jana. He also became a devotee. So Prabhupada explains how Shukadev Goswami became, from being completely absorbed in Brahman, he became completely absorbed in Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's activities. And this completes this answer about Shukadev Goswami, and also about Vyasadeva. When and why and where did he complete the Bhagavatam, and also why Shukadev Goswami underwent this study of the Bhagavatam if he was already self-satisfied. And now he will start, Sutta Goswami will start speaking about Parikshit Maharaj, his birth, activities, renunciation, his death, and also events leading up to Parikshit Maharaj's birth. So we'll hear about the Ashwatthama killing the Pandava's sons, Kunti Devi's prayers, Bhishma's instructions, Krishna leaving Hastinapur and entering Dwaraka. So lots of deep lessons we'll hear, but these are all related to this story of Parikshit Maharaj, how he ended up hearing the Bhagavatam. Okay. So this starts the answer to the question about Parikshit that they asked in the beginning of chapter 4. The sages asked at the beginning of chapter 4, but Sutta Goswami gets a little distracted in the sense that he kind of tells so many other pastimes relating to Krishna. So by the chapter 12, the sages will ask him, please come back to the original question, and then he will continue with specifically with Parikshit Maharaj. So Parikshito Tarajarshir Janma Karma Vilapanam Samstanam Chapandu Putranam Vakshya Krishna Kathodayam. Brajadevi?
Sutta Goswami thus addressed the rishis headed by Shonaga. Now I shall begin the transcendental narration of the Lord Shri Krishna and topics of the birth, activities, and deliverance of King Parikshit, the sage amongst kings, as well as topics of the renunciation of the worldly order by the sons of Pandu.
Okay, so the previous verses established that Krishna's pastimes are so attractive and so powerful that they attract even the self-satisfied. But it's not just Krishna's pastimes, but pastimes of Krishna's devotees, because they're related to Krishna. So they are also Krishna Katha. They are discussing about Vaishnavas. This is also as powerful as Krishna Katha. We read last week, it was last week, one of the purports says, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, the birth and activities of the Lord are all transcendental. Therefore, according to authorized opinion, the birth of Narada as the son of Brahma is also a transcendental pastime. His appearance and disappearance are practically on the same level as that of the Lord. So hearing about devotees is like hearing about Krishna, practically on the same level as that of the Lord. And they're not just transcendental, but they're also pure and purifying, just like hearing about Krishna. So now we'll hear about the Pandavas and Parikshit and Bhishma Dev and Kunti and all these wonderful devotees. Prabhupada says here, the devotees and the Lord are interlinked and they cannot be separated. Therefore, talks about them are all Krishna Katha, or topics of the Lord. Because devotees are never without Krishna. So hearing about them automatically includes Krishna. Yadamrite kauravasrinjayanam vireshato viragatim gateshu vrikodara vithagatam bimarsha Bhagnurudande dhritarashtaputre Bhartu priyam droniritisma pashyan Krishna sutanam svapatam siramsi Upaharad vipriyameva tasya Jugupsitam karna vigarhayanti. Charanarenu?
When the respective warriors of both camps, namely the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warriors obtained their deserved destinations, And when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down lamenting, his spine broken, being beaten by the club of Bhimasena, son of Dronacharya, Ashwatam beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi, delivered them as a prize to his master, foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. Duryodhana, however, disapproved of the heinous act, and he was not pleased in the least.
So this starts the kind of, I guess this story begins at the end of the Kurukshetra war. So the Kora was already lost. Duryodhan, kind of his thighs broken, he fell down, and Ashwatthama, as a last resort, he killed the 5 sleeping sons of the Pandavas. But Duryodhan wasn't pleased because it also killed the kind of lineage of not just the Pandavas but the Kauravas as well. Prabhupada in the purport says that both Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam are Krishna Katha. The Gita is Krishna Katha, topics of Krishna because it's spoken by the Lord, and Bhagavatam is Krishna Katha because it's spoken about the Lord. So both are Krishna Katha. Mata Shishunam Nidanam Sutanam Nishamya Ghoram Paritapyamana Tadarudadva Vashpa Kala Kulakshi Tam Santvadyan Aha Krita Kiritamali. Nilacha Chandra Prabhu?
Draupadi, the mother of the 5 children of the Pandavas, after hearing of the massacre of her sons, began to cry in distress with her eyes full of tears. Trying to pacify her in her great loss, Arjuna spoke to her thus.
Okay, so Draupadi was lamenting. She's the mother of the 5 children who were just killed. Arjuna tries to pacify her. And Arjuna is called Kiritamali, so one who accepted so many crowns, because so many kings bowed at his feet, touched their crowns to his feet. That's why he's called Kiritamali. Tadashu chaste pramrijami bhadre yad brahma bando shira atatayana gandiva muktar vishikar upahare tvakramya yat snasyasi dagda putra. Swarup Damodar Prabhu?
O gentle lady, when I present you with the head of that Brahmana, after beheading him with arrows from my Gandiva bow, I shall then wipe the tears from your eyes and pacify you. Then, after burning your sons' bodies, you can take your bath standing on his head.
Okay, so this is quite heavy, but remember that what Ashwatthama did was also quite heavy. So in general, Ashwatthama is the son of a Brahmana, but because he didn't act like a Brahmana, Brahmanas normally shouldn't be killed even if they do something wrong, but Ashwatthama is called a Brahma Bandhu, or a friend of a Brahmana. He was born in a Brahmin family, but he doesn't behave like a Brahmana. He behaves like a merciless butcher. So that's why he can be killed. He acted like an aggressor. That's described in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the 6 types of aggressors. So they can be killed. In fact, they should be killed by Kshatriyas. Iti priyam vagu vichitra jalpa sasantva chuta mitra suta anvadravadam shita ugradanva kapidvajo guruputram rathena. Brajadevi?
Arjun, who is guided by the infallible Lord as friend and driver, thus satisfied the dear lady by such statements. Then he dressed in armor and armed himself with furious weapons, and getting into his chariot, he set out to follow Ashwatthama, the son of his martial teacher.
Okay, so in one sense, it's Prabhupada didn't even write the purport to this verse, but this is the verse where Krishna enters. So far we heard about Krishna's glories. He's the absolute truth, and he's the source and controller and maintainer of all the different worlds. He's the source of all incarnations. Serving him mitigates our miseries, and hearing about him gives knowledge, renunciation, ultimate happiness. But this is the point where he enters, and he doesn't enter, to great fanfare and, as the king and as the greatest person, but he enters as a chariot driver of his devotee. So Krishna's entrance in one sense is very humble, but at the same time, this also shows that greatest of Krishna's glories is his affection to his devotees. So that's the most wonderful quality of Krishna. And even if you could say Arjuna is in one sense the hero of the Mahabharata, and Krishna seemed to take a subordinate role, but actually it's Krishna who arranges everything or orchestrates everything. But for the Pandavas, Krishna is the main hero, and it's the same for devotees. For devotees, the Lord Krishna is the main hero. So Krishna doesn't enter as I'm the absolute truth or accepting worship or anything like that. He enters as the friend and affectionate servant of his own devotee. So this sets the mood for Krishna. You can have a nice glimpse. This is Krishna's entrance as the chariot driver of Arjuna. Okay. Tam apatantam savilakshya durat kumara hudvigna manaratena paradravat prana paripsururvyam yavat gamam rudra bhayadyatakaha. Ashwatthama, the murderer of the princes, seeing from a great distance Arjuna coming at him with great speed, fled in his chariot, panic-stricken, just to save his life, as Brahma fled in fear of Lord Shiva. So Arjuna was chasing Ashwatthama just like Shiva was chasing Brahma or Surya, the sun god. This is just a comparison. It's not the main theme. It's just a side comment. I try to read one more verse and then Yada sharanam atmanam aikshata shantavajinam astram brahma shiro mene atmatranam tvijatmajaha. When the son of the Brahmana, Ashwatthama, saw that his horses were tired, he considered that there was no alternative for protection outside of his using the ultimate weapon, the Brahmastra or nuclear weapon. So Ashwatthama knows how powerful Arjuna and Krishna, this combination of Arjuna and Krishna, he's seen it in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Remember, all this is going on after the end of the battle. So Ashwatthama already lost his side, there's only 2 or 3 of them still alive. He sees no way out. But the difference is when devotees see no way out, when devotees feel helpless, they surrender to Krishna, they take shelter of Krishna. But when demoniac people see no way out, then they either commit suicide or destroy everything around them. So that's the difference in attitudes to seeing no way out or feeling helpless. And here, in fact, what Ashwatthama does, he sees no way out, so he attacks Krishna, and Arjuna, Krishna and his devotee. So Ashwatthama attacks them with this Brahmastra weapon. It's a very powerful weapon, and Ashwatthama thoughtlessly releases it, even though he doesn't know how to withdraw it. So you're not supposed to release a weapon that you don't know how to withdraw it. And Prabhupada also mentions that he may be a Brahmana by birth, but it's not a hereditary title being a Brahmana. You need to be a Brahmana by qualification. That's why he's a Brahma Bandhu, not a real Brahmana. Okay, we can stop here. So thank you for Manjuvali for putting up the poll. And I got the impression that the 5th of January is the day that seems to be the best for everyone. So is it okay for those devotees who want to do the exam? Is it okay if we do it on the 5th? I think it's basically the first Monday in the new year. Yeah? Okay, so we can do the exam on Monday. We won't have class in a week. We won't have class the week after. So the next class is in 3 weeks, but we'll have an exam just 2 days before. And I strongly recommend that in these next 3 weeks, you can both prepare for the closed book exam, but also start thinking about and maybe even writing your essays, at least one of your essays, or because we still have one more section, but at least kind of start thinking about the open book essays. And also you can start learning, if you've not already started learning, the shlokas. So with the shlokas, one thing we can do that we can arrange a time. I already have a devotee who kind of usually every Saturday or every second Saturday, about 8 o'clock or just after 8, we have a Zoom call for 5 minutes and he recites the latest shloka that he learned. So if it works for you, then we can do it at the same time, or we can arrange another time. So he does one shloka, that's how many he can remember at once. But if you can remember 2, 3, 10, 15, it's even better. So just basically recite the shloka and the translation. So start thinking about that as well. You have time until the end of the first canto, but just so you don't have like 15 shlokas to remember all at once, that's why it's good to kind of start remembering them. Okay. Any questions or?
I want to ask a question.
Uh-huh.
So last time you went through the questions, but this time, because it's more easy, sort of, it's not that this time the questions are quite last time the questions seem to be much more complicated than this time, isn't it? So is this time, that's why we don't go through the questions then?
So my idea was that I'm not going to go through the questions every time, but I thought this is the first time for some of you just finished Bhakti Shastri and you were kind of in the swing of things, but many of you have not done it for a while. So just to give you a general idea of what's expected, that's why I went through the first questions. Maybe they were more harder as well, like you said. I wasn't going to go through this time, but if as you are studying, if you got questions about specific questions, or you just don't understand, or you can't find the answer or something, then please write and I will reply. But I just don't want to go every time, because then it kind of takes away that, okay, I have to research, I have to find the answers, I have to learn the answers. Okay, that's supposed to be part of the study process. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, but please write. If you get stuck somewhere, then please write. Okay. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Have a wonderful 3 weeks. And I hope your studies for the exam go well. And if you don't do the exam, then I see you in 3 weeks. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam.
Jai, Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Sadhu Seva Sadhu Sangha ki jai. Nitai Gaur.
Jai.
Panchaka.
Haribo.
Hare
Jakaputra Vishaka Prasandu Vichapitana Pavnambhyo Vishnavi Namo Namaha. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Oh.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Haribo. Happy holidays, everyone.
You too.